Foxy Lady, The Beginning, Part 2 of 3. Susan Brunel had borne the moniker Susie B from the day she'd been born. Brought up in Adams, Massachusetts, 44 miles due east of New York's capital, her Quaker parents, Dan and Lucy, had instilled in her the importance of being forthright and upright. Susie had known the peace, love, and harmony that accompanied her idyllic childhood, but that tranquil existence had died a violent death on Valentine's Day 2040 when her parents had been shot and killed during a robbery at Adams' Haflinger House restaurant. Susie lost her parents the day before her 20th birthday, and their deaths caused an internal struggle for her regarding pacifism versus nonviolence. Despite the anger and uncertainty that manifested with her parents' murders, she managed to stay true to the pacifist edicts of her parents and found comfort and solace among her fellow congregants at the Friends Church. A score of years after the 2020 Real ID program had been implemented, the Safe Space ID tracker chip program had been added as an adjunct. Susie had found the campaign's advertising slogan reassuring in the words, "Safe Space Trackers, they'll keep you safe," had hit home at a time when she was feeling vulnerable. Susie was the first resident of Adams, Mass. To get chipped. Though the upcoming 2040 election had still been 8 months away, the campaign was in full swing, and the initial promise that Safe Space ID trackers would remain optional soon began to be superseded by a cry for mandatory chipping. The core message that Safe Space ID trackers provided a higher level of personal safety, greater efficiency for first responders, and shorter lines at all government agencies quickly morphed into a mandated requirement for all legal residents of the USA to get chipped, and the chip became the sine qua non for renewing licenses, school attendance, government assistance, and voting. Susie realized that she, like the majority of the USA's 360 million legal residents, had been had. The majority had been had, but all hadn't. Millions had chafed at the federal directive and just said no. The no had been loud, and when it was revealed that only those with a Safe Space ID were eligible to receive any government benefits, protesters erupted with disruptions ranging from online petitions directed to elected officials to riots in the streets. The diversity of protesters was greater than any prior protest in U.S. history. Evangelicals stood side by side with godless, rainbow-striped heathens as elements from the full spectrum of humanity rejected the mandated chipping. Lawsuits advanced to the Supreme Court, and the arguments as diverse as the protesters were given. Arguments concerning religious liberty, a right to privacy, self-incrimination, illegal search and seizure were all rejected by the protectionist SCOTUS. The Supreme Court insisted that Safe Space ID was as optional and as necessary as a driver's license, and that no one was being forced into submission. 50 million Americans exploded and martial law was declared. 50 million additional Americans rushed to their government-controlled healthcare providers and demanded removal of their Safe Space ID trackers. The healthcare workers were unable to comply under penalty of law. Internet became a hotbed for do-it-yourself YouTube videos showing how to extract Safe Space ID trackers. Removal of trackers became a federal crime, a Class A Level 1 offense. Eventually, even discussing the Safe Space ID trackers negatively became a crime. News agencies were forbidden from positively portraying protesters. Any sense of checks and balance was gone. The state reigned supreme. Susie Brunel was having none of it. Reared in a household that emphasized the civil and civil disobedience, she began to find herself visiting websites of groups she once shunned, overlooking their veiled and not so veiled call to arms. The ultimate unpardonable sin for the child Susie B had been. The times, they were changing, as was the Post and many other established media outlets. She began to speak reverently of gun-toting fringe militia groups which she'd always dismissed out of hand. Was it possible that groups she considered hate-filled and violent may actually have something positive to contribute? Inconceivable.